Hey, what's up you guys, The Curious Owl here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys 5 books that I think I've changed my mind on over the last few years since I have read those books. So there's been some things that I've been thinking of for the last few months, and that's been on some of the books I've read in the past. Pretty much all the books I'm going to be talking about are books that I really liked for one reason or another when I first read them, and either since rereading them or since having discussed more in depth about these books with different individuals, I've kind of changed my mind on them based on new information that I've gotten on them, and also just general time having gone by and realizing some things are just not as good as they used to be when I first read them. So I'm gonna go starting from the top of my pile, which I went through alphabetically, and the first one is Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. I remember reading this book when I first started my booktube channel, and I really liked it at first. I kind of didn't like the main character because I thought the whole time she was really whiny, but I really liked the idea of the falling angels and, you know, some of the lore that was associated with it. But since I've read it, I've kind of felt like just the romance in general was very insta-lovey, and I just, for some reason, can't really jive with the romance. I don't know why. I just don't think I would be able to like it as much anymore as if I was to read it now as opposed to when I first read it, because I think I first read it like 3 years ago at this point, and at that time I really was into like those kinds of, you know, really insta-lovey things. I had a bit of a problem with insta-love in some cases, but there were some personal exceptions. This over time has become not one of those exceptions, and I don't know, I think it's more so just the romance in general I don't really think is for me anymore. I also think it's been way too long since I read this one to even be interested in the rest of the series, but if I was to ever get my hands on the rest of the series, I think I would still at least try to read through it. The second one, many of you guys that know me might be a little shocked with, and that is Beautiful Darkness by Kami Garcia and Margaret Stohl, the second novel in the Beautiful Creatures series. I know, this is like blasphemous for me because Beautiful Creatures is my #1 series of all time, but here's the thing, when I did my reread series in 2018, I realized that this one, which had actually been my #1 favorite out of the entire series at the first time I read it, is now not anymore. I took this down from a 5-star to a 4-star because I felt like a lot of the novel was just focused so much on Lena and her depression, where there should have been more in terms of, I think, her really battling against her grief, where I felt like the whole novel was just fighting against her depression and Ethan having to be like the savior of the whole thing, and I didn't necessarily like that so much. I thought that that was a little bit less as romantic as I had originally thought it was. I think it was a little bit more problematic than I would have liked to admit when I was younger. Now this next one is actually pretty much the big reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, and that is Identical by Ellen Hopkins. I first read this in the summer of 2017, and at the time I was so shook by it. I was really shook because the ending of this novel basically revealed that the main character is someone with dissociative identity disorder, because the story is supposedly told through 2 characters who are twins, and one of them is being sexually abused by their father, and the other is kind of like trying to get his attention because of the fact that she's not the one being abused, and she sees it as him just loving the other twin more, and she doesn't want that. She wants to have all the attention for herself. Boy, oh boy, did I not realize at the time how incredibly disgusting a lot of this is. And it's not so much, I think, Ellen's fault, because she does write on a lot of dark topics, but I think that some of the things that are within this novel, in the mental health representation, it's just not good. Now, the idea of the sexual abuse and all that, and the one twin kind of vying for the attention from the other, I don't know if that's necessarily good. I don't think that that's incredibly realistic in terms of what actually would happen. So I kind of think that's a big problem within the story in itself. But my biggest gripe with it, after having over a year since reading it the first time, is that the ending with the twist of there being a mental illness is a little on the insensitive side, I will say. In my opinion, using a mental illness as a plot twist is incredibly insensitive because it almost kind of just makes the mental illness invalidated in a way to me. I don't know, just something about it made it really, really hard for me to understand that it was a good idea for it to be used. There are plenty of people out there who could more eloquently talk about this device of plot twists with using mental illness, but basically it's just not a good idea. I don't think it's right. I don't think that it is in any way excusable, because it's one of those things where, like, oh, all of a sudden your character has a mental illness, surprise, surprise, now they're fucked for life, basically. I don't like that. That's not something I would use in any way for a character, because I don't think that a mental illness should ever be used as a surprise. Like, it almost kind of villainizes them more by having them have a mental illness as a surprise than it would be if you just stated right off the bat they have a mental illness, this is what they deal with, kind of thing. I will say Ellen Hopkins, I think since this book has changed that aspect of it, but this one was not good. Another book that pretty much was the real inspiration for this video itself was All the Right Places by Jennifer Niven. I also read this in the summer 2017, which, as you may be able to tell, the summer of 2017 was not my best year for understanding mental health rep, because I had limited knowledge of it. I didn't know what was good rep versus bad rep, and I am really ashamed to say that, because now I feel like I've grown so much in understanding of mental health rep that it's really awful of me to have thought that this was a really good representation of it. In this novel, we learn that one of the main characters has essentially bipolar disorder, and it's really, really hard to like this character now that I understand how poorly represented he was, because basically he was made out to be things were his way or the highway, and if any major inconvenience happened, he would go kill himself, which for people with bipolar disorder, that's not exactly how things go. Yes, they are a little bit more flippant than most, and they are very much one of those people who their emotions will change at the drop of a dime. But to include the suicidal factor in it really just made this character more of a villain than anything. A lot of his outbursts made him seem to be more of a villain than he really was, as opposed to being someone who is suffering from a mental illness. I just really don't think that it was the best way to represent this kind of mental illness, and definitely was more harmful than anything after having had many discussions on the book with several friends and fellow readers of the book, and having had a lot of time to reflect on it myself. I just don't think it was really that great of a way to talk about the mental illness, when there could have been many other ways for this character to have been suffering with his mental illness in a way that made him less of a crazy person, basically. And finally, the last book that I had changed my mind on as of recently, over the last several months, has been Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. Again, another book I read in the summer of 2017. Again, a time in my life I'm not proud of to say that I felt like I had really great sound and good reviews, considering the fact that I now don't like the idea of what happens in this book. So for those of you that don't know, this is a book dealing with a character who essentially I would equate to having something like a bubble boy syndrome, which basically she can't leave her house, because if she does, she is prone to many different sicknesses and could pretty much die from any number of things that could go wrong within her being outside of her house. The thing that really ground my gears about this book is the crux of the story, where you find out why she's even has this illness. And it's not even so much that she has an illness. So towards the end of the novel, you find out that Maddie is not actually sick. Her mother reveals that she has basically been hiding Maddie away because of the fact that when Maddie's father died, the mom really got paranoid about everything, and so was doing everything and anything to protect her daughter from any kind of outside negativity, force, sickness, anything like that. So she basically lied to her daughter for her entire life about the fact that she was deathly sick, and if anything, caused her to become easily more sick because of the fact that she didn't allow her daughter to build up an immunity to several different things that she could have built an immunity for had she been able to go outside and actually live a normal freaking life. I don't even think I need to explain why that is really awful and why that is so bad. I think at the time I read this, I was definitely more focused on the romance between her and Ollie. I didn't even think about how awful the mother was to her daughter, and it just, I'm not amused with it anymore. I guess it's not so much what Nicola Yoon did as a writer, because I think that it's a really good plot twist. I just don't like the character of the mom as much, I think, when reflecting on this book. But there you guys go. Those are my thoughts on 5 books that I've changed my mind on for one reason or another. Anyway, if you guys would like to talk about more books that you thought you've changed your mind on over the years for one reason or another, please let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear some thoughts on either these books or books that you have changed your mind on. And as always, if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit the button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys.